Steady, consistent. Wisconsin football just continues to do what they do, whether it be in season or off season. We got Tyler Hunt on the line to talk Badgers. You can join Tyler at Bucky's Fifth Quarter on SB Nation. Tyler, how you doing today?
Good. Another off season getting started, but it'll be an interesting one for the Badgers. So happy to come on and discuss that a little further.
Yeah, before we dive into 2020, of course, you had the opportunity to head out to Pasadena to take in the Rose Bowl. You can certainly share your experiences in taking in Southern California and all the festivities that lead into the game and so forth. And I know that I'm guessing that it was still a productive and noteworthy and memorable trip, despite the outcome of the game, which we'll hit upon as well, since 28-27 was difficult to take, especially considering a late pass interference call, a fluke play in which the punter just drops the ball inexplicably, and it turns into 7 points for the Ducks. You hold that Oregon offense with a future NFL quarterback down to less than 200 yards before the closing drive and still lose the game by 1 point.
Yeah, the game itself was a little bit swallow in terms of the result, especially when you look at that makes it the fourth straight Rose Bowl that the Badgers have lost, and all of them have been close down to the end, heartbreakers. So it seems to be a tradition that when the Badgers go out to Pasadena, that is kind of how it ends. And but the experience itself was well worth it. You can't really in terms of views and just experience overall. It's hard to beat Pasadena in the Rose Bowl. Late in the quarter when the sun was setting, it truly is pretty picturesque spot to watch a football game. So I was telling people after, if you're a fan of the game, even if team, if a different conference and your team never gets to the Rose Bowl, it's well worth going and experiencing. If you can manage to handle the 17 drinks and food that seems to be out there. But overall, it was a great trip. Wish it would have ended a little different, but I was just happy to be there, and it was a close game. I want to go out there just to watch a blowout. So in the end of it all, it was awesome to be a part of.
Got Tyler Hunt on the line from SB Nation's Bucky's Fifth Quarter. Please join him for football and basketball coverage for Wisconsin right there. And let's talk up the NFL draft and the impact on Wisconsin football. Of course, the headliner is Jonathan Taylor after another stellar season and historic run there at Wisconsin for 3 years, moving on to the NFL draft. Quintez Cephas also is declared for the NFL draft. Just kind of run down not only the NFL draft early entries, but some of the big losses and who might be the best candidates to replace some of those guys.
Sure. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor's obviously the big one, and you expected that coming into this season. I think everybody knew this was going to be his final few games in Madison, and I think everybody was able to cherish what he brought in this season, and it wasn't a huge surprise. In terms of replacement, you're not going to replace Jonathan Taylor. I mean, you look at guys of years past. Obviously, Melvin Gordon left early, and there were guys in between that stepped in and were pretty solid. But you're only going to get a few Melvin Gordons and Jonathan Taylors, and level of one. As for Quintez Cephas leaving early, yeah, that one was a little bit of a surprise depending on who you talk to. But I think his ceiling in terms of college game was probably after this season. He could have came back and maybe developed a little bit more, but who knows if he would have had as good a season as he had this year. And thankfully Wisconsin has a few receivers and Kendrick Pryor and Danny Davis back next year to help fill that role. But he was clearly Jack Cohn's number one target. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes to. And then, of course, the other early departure was Tyler Biadasz at center position. He's going to be a tough one to replace, but he was the other guy you kind of expected to leave early. And Wisconsin does a good job of developing offensive linemen, so you have to think they'll find a way to fill that goal, fill the goal. But he was in holes for Taylor for the past 3 years. And then in terms of graduation, obviously they lost the defensive side of the ball. Both Chris Orr and Zach Bond were your two, top defensive players. So when you look at the roster, really, Wisconsin kind of lost their probably top 4 to 5 players in this class or leaving early. So there's going to be some big shoes to fill, but I think the coaching staff is excited with the guys that they're going to have stepping in. But it's going to be hard to replace some of them.
It's amazing to keep in mind that, of course, the all-time leading rusher in college football is another Badger back, Ron Dane, who won a Heisman Trophy back in 1999, that Jonathan Taylor could have rushed for less than 1,000 yards as a senior and taken over the all-time lead as the all-time leading rusher in the history of college football. He's about 970 less than Ron Dane. He could have run for less than 1,000 yards and still been the all-time leader in rushing. So if he would have posted his typical 1,800 yards, wow, you're looking at leading the entirety of the history of college football by 1,600 yards in rushing. That's how dominant he's been for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, JT was a special player. I know some Wisconsin fans would argue that, unfortunately, get his whole performances counted in and that he would still have it after that. But either one, both are spoken about, I think, in lore already in terms of the Wisconsin fan base. And he's going to be a guy that's going to be hard to replace. But the Badgers, have some guys, and they've always, every year or every couple of years, it seems like Wisconsin's a guy they have to replace. They seem to find a quality back. And Nakia Watson is probably the guy that's going to get a bulk of the spring carries coming in, but they've got a couple of other guys. Julius Davis is a young guy that was kind of banged up early this season, a young kid. And then, of course, they landed a 4-star running back in Berger that kind of continued that running back from New Jersey pipeline, which was a big get for the Badgers. And there's one other recruit that is, that kind of under wrapped by the coaching staff. We don't really know who it is yet, but he's out there, and apparently there's some news and some rumblings. So hopefully Wisconsin has, a stable of backs that are ready to try and fill that void, kind of in a, by committee role.
It's actually turning out to be one of the higher-ranked recruiting classes for Wisconsin, and just about everybody signed, with the second National Signing Day coming up in just a couple weeks. 5th ranked in the Big Ten, number 25 national rank according to 247 Sports. And again, despite Wisconsin churning out top 10 to 15 teams almost every year, the recruiting rankings are typically not too kind for the Badgers. So this is one of the better classes statistically. We'll see how they perform on the field. 7 enrollees in early on campus. Any big highlights that you'd like to go through in regards to some of these new early enrollees?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few, top quality players in this class overall. I mean, I've been headlined by Jack Nelson and Trey Wettig. Wisconsin, the 2 top players in the class were offensive linemen. No surprise there. But really, this class is going to be a group, and obviously the guys that are getting in there early are going to have that step forward. But in the class as a whole, it's going to be a group of glue guys that fills in the cracks of everything, where maybe they're not the flashiest players and flashiest names, but they're going to be key players in a couple of years. The one I mentioned, Jalen Berger, as obviously probably has the biggest star potential. He was a 4-star running back, again, out of New Jersey that was recruited by the likes of LSU, UCLA. So really to get him after a while there thinking that they weren't going to was a pretty big get. And you kind of see as an athletic, not so much a James White type, but a guy that can both run the ball and, catch the ball out of the backfield, which if there was one knock on Jonathan Taylor, it was his ability in the passing game, and obviously improved on that. But Berger comes in with that pretty solidified in his skill set. So he'll definitely be the one to watch in an interesting, running back room this year in 2020.